Story no. 1. The sound coming from inside the walls. The sound started 3 weeks after we moved into the house. A scratching, soft, irregular, coming from inside the wall behind the headboard of our bed. We assumed mice immediately. Old house, rural area, it happens. We called an exterminator. He came, inspected, found nothing. No evidence of rodents anywhere in the house. No droppings, no entry points, no nesting material. He said whatever was making the sound, it wasn't mice. We tried to ignore it. Some nights it was quiet, and we almost forgot about it. Other nights it was persistent enough that one of us would sleep on the couch. It never came from anywhere else. Only that one wall, only behind the headboard, only at night. My husband eventually decided to open the wall. He's handy, it was his idea. I want to be clear about that because what happened next was not something either of us anticipated. He cut a section of drywall out, carefully, a clean square, about 18 inches across, and we looked inside. The wall cavity was empty. Insulation, studs, electrical wiring running vertically. Nothing that should be making any sound, nothing alive, nothing mechanical, nothing that explained 3 weeks of scratching from that exact location. We stood there looking at the open wall for a long moment. Then the scratching started again. From inside the cavity, right in front of us, with the wall open and both of us watching. There was nothing there, nothing visible, nothing moving, just the sound. That same soft, irregular scratch, coming from a space we could see clearly contained nothing capable of producing it. My husband reached into the cavity. He moved his hand slowly through the insulation, through the empty air, through the entire accessible space. The scratching stopped the moment he put his hand in. It started again the moment he pulled his hand out. We patched the wall that same afternoon. We pushed the bed to the other side of the room so the headboard was against a different wall. The scratching followed. Same sound, same irregular rhythm, now coming from the new wall behind the headboard. We sold the house 14 months later. We told the buyers the scratching was probably an animal getting in somewhere we hadn't found. We'd looked long enough to know that wasn't true, but we didn't know what else to say. The sound followed us to the bedroom. Whatever it wasn't in the walls. It was near us. Story no. 2. Something was under the bed every night for a month. I am a grown adult. I have a graduate degree. I work in finance. I am telling you that for a period of approximately 30 days, I was genuinely afraid to look under my own bed. And that when I finally did look, what I found was worse than nothing. It started with a feeling, the particular childhood feeling, one I hadn't experienced in 20 years, of not wanting my feet to hang over the edge of the mattress, of wanting to be fully on the bed, centered, nothing dangling. I noticed it one night and dismissed it as stress. Work had been difficult. I wasn't sleeping well. The brain does strange things under pressure, but it came back the next night. And the night after that. By the end of the first week, I was getting into bed differently. From the foot of the bed, climbing up, rather than sliding in from the side the way I always had. Not because I decided to. Because standing next to the bed in the dark and reaching for the covers felt wrong in a way my body simply refused to cooperate with. By the end of the second week, I was sleeping with the lamp on. I heard it for the first time at the end of week 2. A sound from below the mattress. Not loud, not dramatic. A slow, deliberate sound, like something shifting its weight. Patient and unhurried, the way something sounds when it has been still for a long time and is simply adjusting. I lay completely still and listened. It came twice more. That same sound of careful, measured movement, and then stopped. I did not sleep that night. I called a friend the next morning and described what was happening without quite saying what I thought it was. She suggested a carbon monoxide detector. Low-level CO can cause paranoia and auditory hallucinations. I bought one that afternoon. The readings were normal. I looked under the bed on the 28th day. I don't know what changed that made me able to do it. Something about the accumulated weight of a month of fear that finally tipped into a kind of exhausted determination. I turned on every light in the room, got down on the floor, and looked. There was nothing under the bed. Dust. A sock I'd lost months ago. Nothing else. But on the wooden floor directly beneath where I slept, in the dust, there were marks. Long parallel lines, evenly spaced, like something had been dragged slowly across the floor. Or like something had been lying there and moving its fingers, very slowly, back and forth. I moved the bed out and cleaned the floor that same day. I have no explanation for the marks. The feeling stopped after I looked, whatever it was, real or constructed by my own exhausted brain. Acknowledging it directly seemed to end it. I've thought about that many times. About what it means that looking made it stop. About whether it needed to be seen before it could leave. Story No. 3. I followed the crying sound into the woods. I want to say first that I know how this sounds. I know that following an unidentified sound into the woods at night is the premise of every horror story ever written, and that any reasonable person would turn around and go back inside. I know that. I want you to understand that I know that, and that I followed the sound anyway, and that I've spent 2 years trying to understand why. It was late September. I was staying at my uncle's property, a few acres of land in a heavily wooded area in the northeast. A main house and a small guest cabin where I was sleeping. My uncle was in the main house, maybe 200 yards away through the trees. I had a good phone signal. I was not isolated in any dangerous sense. I woke up at 1:30 in the morning to the sound of a child crying. Clear and unmistakable, not an animal sound, not whined through branches. A child crying coming from somewhere in the trees beyond the cabin. A young child, from the pitch of it, distressed, but not screaming, the kind of sustained, exhausted crying that comes after a long time of being frightened. My first thought was rational. A child was lost. A family camping nearby. A kid who'd wandered from a tent. I got up, put on shoes and a jacket, took my phone with its flashlight, and went toward the sound. It stayed ahead of me. Not by much, close enough to sound near, far enough that my flashlight never found the source. I moved toward it and it receded at the same pace, maintaining distance. For the first few minutes, I told myself the acoustics of the woods were misleading me. That sound moved strangely between trees. Then I stopped walking. The crying continued. Same distance. Same direction, as though whatever was producing it had also stopped and was waiting. I stood still for almost a full minute. The crying did not get closer, did not recede further, just continued, patient and consistent, from a fixed point in the dark ahead of me. I turned around and walked back to the cabin. The crying continued behind me as I walked. I did not look back. I got inside, locked the door, and sat on the bed until it stopped, which took about 20 minutes. In the morning, I told my uncle. He listened without much expression, and then said that was the 3rd time someone staying in that cabin had reported the same thing. Same sound, same direction, same behavior of staying just ahead of whoever followed it. I asked him what he thought it was. He said he didn't know. He said the first time it happened was 20 years ago, before I was born, and that it had never led anywhere anyone could find, and had never come inside. He said as long as you don't follow it too far, it stops on its own. I asked him what happened if you followed it too far. He looked at me for a moment. Then he said nobody who'd stayed in the cabin had done that. He said it like that was a deliberate choice people had made. I've thought about that a lot, about the specific phrasing. Not that it hadn't happened, that nobody had done it. As though everyone who heard it had, at some point, made the same decision I did and turned around.